so much more dramatic than it is. What a mix though, eh? What do we reckon? We like the new music. Hunted around for a bit for something tonight, just to make sure that it was of the requisite quality. Drop the volume there so you can actually hear my levels of hosting above the music. Some interesting number choices. I'm really liking some of these as well. Pretty solid. What we'll do is we'll take the opportunity there to pause that where it was. We will hit the button. Oh, no, that button. Hey, there we go. That's what we like. We like it when things work, and I remember to actually press the right thing. That would help too. We'll get started in a second, just looking at some of the number choices. What would I have? I would have... I did, in the one game of hockey I've actually played, I wore 84, because that's the year of my birth, because I'm an old man. But if I was choosing now, I would wear 11, not because I'm a massive fan of Hallam Wilson, but I got married on the 11th. And when I got married, the Rostock Piranhas gifted me a signed jersey with my name on the back with number 11 to celebrate my wedding, which was pretty cool of the club. One of the favourite things I own, and massive of the club as well. So really awesome that they did that for me at the time. And yeah, it's one of those sort of things that will never ever leave. It will never be given away. That particular jersey. So, but yes, my name on it, my shirt, as it were. And we didn't actually have a number 11 that season either. So, 42. It's the answer. Yes, Jer. That is the correct. It is the answer to many things. So of course I won't spoil it. If you've not read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, do, just because it is brilliant. 31 for Grant Fuhr, which obviously makes fantastic sense for Rod. 1973, 2376, 21, always a good shout. Sam Moakford's old number for the Bees and for the Bison, and for Nottingham as well. 49 for Mr. Callahan. Either way, we could talk numbers all night, and we probably will, because that's the nature of hockey. But we need to swap numbers for words. Guys, gals, and the gender fluid. It is Wednesday night. It is 8 PM. Welcome back once again to the BOTW What's Current stream. My name is Anthony Russell, here to take you once again throughout the weird, wonderful, and wacky world that is the National Ice Hockey League structure here in Great Britain. We focus on the National Division. That is our bread and butter. That is our home port. But of course, we're here to look at absolutely anything and everything that happens across the NIHL, from the National as well as Division 1 and Division 2 in the north and in the south. Good evening, everyone. Hope you are doing well. I need a haircut and a shave. I'm lazy. What can I say on that front? But we've got a ton of stuff to talk about like that. Controversy, consternation, and competition are the bywords of this episode. But of course, before we kick off too far, those little bits of housekeeping that we need to do. If you're new, hi. If you've been here before, hi again. But of course, you can check out all the bits and pieces that are over at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. That's the website where I've been writing about ice hockey here in Britain for the past nearly 13 years. It's 12 years, 10 months, just about. Or 12 years, 9.5 if you want to be really pedantic about it. But tons of stuff over on the website. Started off as my way to cover the basics. Like Bison, but as the Bison have now wandered off into the mists. And actually as well, over time, it's swapped from being just about one team to being about British hockey in general. You can keep up with my ramblings from across the year in my Banners on the Road series. Any game I go to, I get a good in-depth write-up. And that, of course, means you get a really cracking game from this past weekend. I was at the hangar for Slough versus Chelmsford, not Cheltenham, before you say anything, Chris Callahan. Thanks my autocorrect on my phone for that one. But a superb game from South One this past weekend. Two clubs with different styles, different cultures, different everything meeting, and it was a superb game of hockey. But you can check out from all the games I've been to across this season over on the website, as well as our Hockey Stories series. Hockey Stories, as like I said, there's a few bits and pieces and a few wheels were in motion. Things kind of sort of stopped off over Christmas. Going to get back to that. But of course, there's a good long period's worth of stuff that is interviews with players, officials, all kinds of things from the 19th century to the present day. behind the Iron Curtain into World War II and beyond. There's stuff on the website. It's in written form. It's in video form as well. And if you're looking through the Hockey Story series, if you're picking out pieces to go have a look at, I'd recommend. If you're picking my favourites out, actually, because I very rarely say this, but there's a couple. One of them is actually probably the first proper Hockey Stories piece, as it were, which is Back to War, which is the story of Conn Smythe, the man who founded the Toronto Maple Leafs, how he ended up in Basingstoke during World War II. And if you're also looking for other bits, the 2 interviews that I've done with Steve Nightingale, former Peterborough, former Invicta, former Haringey netminder, who is now the sports scientist and sort of strength and conditioning coach for the New Jersey Devils. So he went from Peterborough and learning how to play at Breton to now working for one of the top teams in the world. So if you're looking at your Hockey Stories, go check that out. There's a bunch of other stuff there on the website. The old BOTW podcast, Dice Hockey, our free to download game. All of that is over on the website, bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. And the other thing, of course, is we are live here on YouTube Wednesday nights throughout the NIHL season. Occasionally we move to Fridays when people need me to commentate on stuff. But we are generally here Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. throughout the NIHL season to talk about all the action from across all 5 divisions across the NIHL. If you're not already, head down below. Links to all the social media as well as our virtual busking hat at buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. All that's down there in the description. If you haven't already, like the video, subscribe, share it to your friends, share it to your enemies if you feel like it as well. Feed that algorithm hamster, as I like to say. And of course, because this is not a monologue. This is a conversation with all of you guys, and thank you to those of you who join regularly. And if it's your first time, please feel free. Look over there. It's the chat. Feel free to use it. All I ask is that if you are going to use that function, please remember the golden rule here at BOTW, and that is DBAD. Don't be a dick. Be respectful of other people's thoughts and feelings, and we are going to have a fantastic time. Comments, questions, thoughts, feelings, whatever you want to chuck in there as we go along, please feel free. Right. There is a fair bit to talk about because this week has been bonkers, all things considered. We'll head back, though, to last weekend. And the big news out of the National is, of course, to do with the Sheffield Steel Dogs and whatever seems to be going on there. There's a lot of stuff going around. However, we do need to touch on the incident that is arguably probably more serious and that has gone very, very quiet over the last couple of days because the statement has been taken down, but Blackburn did end up putting out a statement during just after the weekend on Monday regarding their games against Deeside at the weekend. And from having spoken to people who were there, the games themselves were superb. Great advert for Hockey in North 1. Just like the game I went to was a great advert for South 1. 2 games that fantastic bits of things like Deeside icing 16-year-old netminders in both of them. The Flintshire Freeze nostalgia weekend, and everything that kind of came with that. And then on Monday we had this pretty crazy statement come out from the Blackburn Hawks, in which Jared Dickinson, former Manchester Phoenix player, of course, been playing with Deeside for a little while, is accused of punching Blackburn player, and I'm going to try and say this correctly, David's Urinenox. I apologise to David if I've mispronounced his name there. But Dickinson is accused of having punched the Blackburn player off the ice in the tunnel between periods and then gone back out onto the ice and finished the game after this has happened. Now, that statement has been taken down by the Hawks, but because the internet is forever, we of course can have a quick look at it here, just repeating what it says. So I'm just going to quickly, so I've got it on my phone, so I'm just going to read it off very quickly. This is from Monday, where they said, on Sunday the 7th of January 2024, in the fixture between the Deeside Dragons and the Blackburn Hawks played at the Deeside Leisure Centre, Blackburn Hawks player David Urinenox was physically assaulted by opposition player Jared Dickinson whilst the teams made their way to their respective dressing rooms in the tunnel area at the end of period 2. Mr. Urinenox was punched in the face, which resulted in him having to receive immediate medical attention from Hawks physio Beth Ferris whilst he lay on the floor outside the dressing room. The club sought guidance from England Ice Hockey and was advised to follow protocols and inform North Wales Police, which it did. The incident itself is now a matter for both authorities to deal with, and the club will comment no further at this moment in time. However, Evermax Events Limited, trading as Blackburn Hawks, will not tolerate such behaviour and would like to make it known that Mr Dickinson will not, in capital letters, be allowed entry into the Blackburn Arena whilst Evermax Events Limited are holding an event. Both England Ice Hockey and Deeside Dragons have been informed. That was the original statement that was put up by Blackburn on Monday. That has now been taken down. The investigation remains ongoing. Now, a few bits and pieces, rumour-wise, have come out. Deeside have understandably said nothing at all. Blackburn put out their statement and have then retracted it. Although I do not believe, he says, quickly tapping buttons as we're talking, that there has been any other statement during that time. But we will, of course, very, very quickly check. He says not being able to spell with his fat fingers. Is there anything on the Blackburn Hawks social media? I don't believe there is. There is not. The last tweet from the Hawks is from a couple of days ago, which is the sort of end of game graphic from their loss in Deeside on Sunday. But yeah, so obviously quite a big talking point, something that we'll be keeping an eye on here at BOTW just to see what happens on that front. Whether we will get an announcement or not, I do not know. Obviously, from a practical standpoint, banning a player from a rink has happened in the past before. It's happened to Ryan Watt. It's happened to I believe it wasn't Paxton. It wasn't Paxton Schultz. I'm trying to remember who it was. It was, but definitely there was definitely a Bees player, another Bees player who was banned quite a while ago for punching a vending machine or something like that. But either way, it does cause something of a problem, because what happens if things conspire and Blackburn and Deeside have to play each other in the playoffs? Now, banning him from the rink is what it is, and obviously if they're of the belief that this has happened, then that is the sort of steps that they are able to take. If they're the people running the venue at that time, they obviously rent the ice and rent the venue from Planet Ice, which runs the rink in Blackburn, to be able to do that. They can say, we don't want you in, especially because they'll be the ones paying for the security to be there. But in the playoffs, Jared Dickinson is admittedly not the highest scoring player in the world, but he's a big, he's a part of the team, and you do not know what your players will do. And saying if a guy is injured or a guy is suspended, that is a different kettle of fish. But if the IHA find Dickinson is not guilty of any wrongdoing, or that something can't be proved, and these two sides end up facing each other in the postseason, what happens there? If there has to be a game in Blackburn, it's going to be a very, very awkward situation, because what do England Ice Hockey say today? Do they allow this to stand, that a player in a knockout game is not allowed to play, not because he's suspended, not because the coach has not chosen to play him, but because the opposition say, we don't want you in the building? And it becomes a very, very tough situation. Now, of course, if these two sides end up meeting at the Northern Playoff weekend, different kettle of fish, everything off the table. Blackburn have no say. But, of course, what remains to be seen is England Ice Hockey's investigation. We're still waiting for the one about the Nottingham situation, by the way, as to what happens with that. But, as we've not seen as there's not been a full investigation come out about the incidents that happened in Nottingham that related to the resignation of Barry Archer as chair of what was the EIHA, I'm not holding my breath at the moment. What remains to be seen is, does Jared Dickinson ice this weekend for Deeside? That's something we'll all be keeping an eye on. And then to the National, and to the big talking point of the last couple of days, which is the Sheffield Steel Dogs. Now, the Dogs have had a bit of a tough time of it recently. Jason Hewitt, of course, stepping down as coach, being replaced by Steve Weeks, who previously coached the Sheffield Scimitars and has been on the bench at times for the Dogs across this season. Obviously, the results have been pretty poor. I was in Swindon for that first game back at the Link Centre, and the Dogs looked short on ideas, short on enthusiasm, and just didn't look like they were going to be able to do an awful lot on that front. But we've now seen, and there's a bunch of stuff that's starting to come out, and a lot of this stuff, of course, is hearsay and rumour. We're not going to delve too deep into that, but what we do know is over the last couple of days that there have been two players remove themselves from the roster. One of them, long-time Steel Dog Tim Smith, who's been around for a very long time, was part of the Andre Payet area, obviously then into Greg Wood, and into now under the new ownership that they that the Steel Dogs have. But essentially, Tim Smith turning around and saying that he's lost the love of the game, and when now he's got to that point, it's time to step away. And fair play to him on that front. When players get to that point, it's hard to, why should you carry on? Especially at national division level, where there are long journeys, especially for a team like Sheffield, where you're based quite far north. Even, yes, admittedly, Leeds and Hull aren't too far away, but it's 3 hours to Dumfries. It's 4 hours down, 4 hours down south to get to places like Romford, or to get to, 3.5 hours or whatever it is to get to Swindon. It's not an easy life, and and ultimately, if your heart's not in it, it's definitely right to step away. However, then came the statement from Jack Brammer. Now, Jack Brammer is not the greatest hockey player in the world, but he's a very, very decent player, and he's an up-and-coming developing player who's been around with the Dogs for a little while and obviously come through the Sheffield Junior system, and has, in the last couple of years, not been their top scorer by any stretch of the imagination, but has been a really, really key depth piece of what you'd probably call like their middle six. The Dogs have obviously, generally been relatively good unless they've had a lot of injuries at playing 3.5, 4 lines. But and Brammer could generally be relied on to be, at best to play second line minutes, most of the time third line secondary scoring, and he's been very, very good at it. And then what people have obviously noticed is that ice time has slowly been whittled away for him, and that some of these younger players are getting more and more ice time. Now, the statement from Brammer, if you've not read it, he put it out on Facebook. It's obviously been shared around quite a bit, but we will touch on it here, if nothing else, because he mentioned some fantastic people in it who've been involved with the Dogs for a very long time. So Jack put this out yesterday. And it reads as follows. Hi, Steel Dogs fans. I know there's been lots of rumours circulating, and most of you may have already guessed what this post is about to say. The years I've spent at the Steel Dogs have been some of the best of my life. I've experienced the highest highs, like taking home the trophies, and the lowest lows of having the privilege of retiring my best friend's jersey on the ice. I will cherish the memories I've made with the Steel Dogs for the rest of my life, but I've had to make the impossible decision to move on for my own development and to fall back in love with the sport, which will mean moving down a league. Unfortunately, that's being stopped by the club at the moment, as there is a big payout clause involved that isn't affordable for any team in that league and won't come to a mutual agreement, and is affecting my development by not getting back on the ice. I will forever be grateful for the opportunities given to me by the club and for all the hard work that goes on behind the scenes, and all the Allies, that's Ali Cree, the former owner, Roger and Jane's work in the past, and the most important person in that room, Shirley Packwood. And if you don't know Shirley, get to know Shirley. But there are certain factors recently that have limited my ice time and therefore my development. Thank you for your support, Dogs fans. You might not be the biggest group, but sure are the best. I wish you nothing but success in the future, and hopefully the boys will bring you more trophies and keep the party bus alive for us all. So for those of you, like I say, if it had just been Tim Smith retiring saying, I've fallen out of love with the game, this is tough, I'm not doing it anymore, you'd forgive it. Tim Smith has obviously been around that club for a very, very long time. We've seen him battle literally and metaphorically on the ice. Obviously watched the Dogs win the playoffs a couple of years ago, and for a guy who's a bit more advanced in his career, just getting to that point of going, I'm done. Work, life, hockey's just not for me right now, and I need to step away from it. You wouldn't argue it, but that statement from Jack Brammer definitely speaks to the fact that something is not quite right. Now, there have been a lot of rumblings out of the Steel Dogs about now that the new ownership is in. Obviously, Tony Smith and the Steelers took over the Steel Dogs very, very late in the summer. We don't need to necessarily drag up everything that happened again in the summer, but obviously there was a team that was there that was told it wasn't going to play, then was going to play. And it's very, very obvious that the Steelers have their own vision for what Steel Dogs hockey looks like, even to the fact where they changed the jersey colours into the Steelers colours of orange and white right at the beginning of the season. Something that I still think they should have announced before they did it, because if nothing else, the jerseys are not very nice. And the Steel Dogs traditionally had the best jerseys in the division, irrespective of whether they had the best team or not. Now, the Steel Dogs are owned by the Steelers, and the Steelers are well within their rights to do what they want with the team. However, if they're going to do what a lot of people suspect they're going to do, and I should say me included, which is the Steel Dogs are going to go down the path of being a development team. They're going to be Steelers B, Junior Steelers, irrespective of that. And eventually they will probably keep the Steel Dogs name for that bit of separation, maybe as a connection to history. At least I hope they do. And that's actually entirely their prerogative. We can't argue that point. We don't own the team. The thing that irks me about this, and certainly for some of the rumblings about it, is that some of the old guard are being pushed out, and some of the young, and obviously younger players are taking their ice time. If this isn't something that the players were aware was going to happen, or the fan base was aware that was going to happen, then the Steelers need to be honest with people, and they need to say the thing out loud as to what they're going to do. Given the fact the Steelers took over the club so late, and everything that happened with it, obviously there wasn't time to change direction that quickly. And obviously they brought in Jono Phillips, not a huge surprise there, obviously still more than capable of playing, but moving away from being a full-time professional hockey player to being semi-pro and working outside of it. That's cool. And they had a team that was there, signed, ready to go. And then all of a sudden they seem to want to take some of those guys who, literally bled for the Steel Dogs as an organisation, and to shuffle things kind of away from that isn't great. There's obviously been a lot of rumours about a lot of different players, Dimitri Zimostra being the largest of them. However, there's nothing confirmed on any of that front, so I can't comment on it. What we do know is that there's definitely something amiss, because Jack Brammer has obviously alluded to the fact that the rumours are there and that people are speaking about it, and that if the rumours were there about him, that they were true, that he wanted to go and is not being allowed to go, and he feels that his ice time has been reduced and he's going to drop down. Now, Brammer's not going to South 1, he's going to North 1, and eventually he's probably not going to go to the Scimitars, so that narrows it down to one of the 8 teams he's potentially going to go to. And Jack Brammer in North 1 is going to go gangbusters, because he is very, very good and better than the level of North 1, with all due respect to those that play in it. So what happens from there on that front, I don't know. But it very much sounds like, from what Brammer has said in his statement, that he is not the only one, because we've seen Tim Smith go. Who else is potentially looking to move on? Because the change of direction has been so breakneck and implemented in such a way where guys are falling out of love with the game, then that doesn't speak well. And the irony, of course, is the Steelers in the Elite League right now are superb. They're almost unstoppable at the moment. They've got Cardiff second-guessing themselves on the ice. They've got Belfast fans pretty much having an aneurysm every 5 minutes because they're not winning anymore. And the Steelers are just absolutely crushing everybody right now. And then the Dogs are kind of being left to sort of flap in the wind a little bit, it looks like, or they've tinkered too much too soon. For one man's opinion, and I'm interested, of course, to hear your opinions on this, so do please stick them in the chat. When it comes to the Dogs, this year was always going to be transitional. Everything that happened over last summer, with the rigmarole around selling the team, being in the National, not being in the National, being in the National again, obviously had an impact. Sheffield were never going to be the force they were a couple of years ago. It's just the nature of the beast when these kind of things happen. However, the right thing, in my opinion, to do is to say to those players, those older guys, if that's the direction you're wanting to move, and like I said, if they want to turn the Steel Dogs into an under-23s team, an under-25s team, however you want to label it, a development affiliate for the Steelers, so young players can go there, play for the Dogs, get the ice time in key situations, and then move up and move down, and eventually move up or move on out somewhere else, right? If that's what they want to do, that's fine. In some ways, the National Division would probably benefit from that, because you've got a pipeline of players that, even if they don't make the Steelers, Manchester might pick them up, Dundee might pick them up, Fife might pick them up, Coventry might pick them up. Guys will have an opportunity if they've got if there's a team there that is based on development, and then the other teams in the National Division are kind of more on that, and more focused on development by proxy and developing the National Division as a product. And the Steel Dogs can be a part of that with a twist. That in itself isn't a bad idea. But if you think about the guys who are there, Lewis Bell, Ben Morgan, Dimitri Zimostra, Smith can be included in that as well. Matt Bissonette's been there for a good couple of years. And you think about those guys who went through the mill, those guys who were holdovers from the Andre Payet era, from the Fighting Steel Dogs, and transitioned into being under Greg Wood, and Wood, for all of his failings, seemed like a pretty decent coach and won them a playoff title. And you say to those guys, this is it. This chapter of the Steel Dogs is closing. We've now bought the team, and this is our purpose, and this is what we want to do with it going forward. We are where we are this year, but and we're going to play out this year, and just be aware, guys, that a lot of you are not going to be back next year, because this is what we want to do with the Steel Dogs as an organisation, and let them have their final chapter together. You've got to do right by the guys. And I know this, and I know it sounds, and people will sort of say, oh, workers' rights, Anthony, and all that kind of thing. You're damn right. You're damn right I am. Having seen my team disappear, the least that these guys who put on a Steel Dogs jersey every week, and I ain't going to sit here and say I'm some massive fan of the Steel Dogs, because I'm not. I've watched them have brawls in Basingstoke. I remember, losing to the Steel Dogs in the playoffs got Steve Moria fired in Basingstoke, and ultimately, the idea that guys are just getting pushed out rather than being allowed to choose their method out, especially as well where they've put time and effort into that jersey, into that club. Because let's face it, owned by the Steelers or not, the Steel Dogs aren't some sort of magic entity. They were there, and people built it up, and people put their time and their effort and their energy into it, and they deserve more than the Steelers coming in and going, right, now we've got things the way we want it, bang, everybody out. And people will say, Anthony, that's business. They can do what they want. And they're right, they can do what they want. But you can still do things the right way. Business does not mean lack of morals. Business does not mean doing the right thing by people. You can still do that. You can have that transition, by all means. But why ruin it for people on the way? Now, people are not everybody's going to get on board with a change of direction for the Steel Dogs. People are not going to, there are some people who are like, why do I want to watch a glorified B team? And I get that. Crowds at the MK Thunder, crowds at the Junior Devils, and then I think about the fact I went to go watch the Guildford Phoenix, and like 250, 300 people for a 4th Division ice hockey game. If you do it right, your B team doesn't have to mean your less team. Horrible example for British hockey, but I think of the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Toronto Marlies, which was, from an NHL perspective, the first of the big teams in the NHL to go, we're not going to have our developmental affiliate a bajillion miles away. We're going to have them in here with us next door, effectively. And the Marlies, as a hockey product, like AHL hockey, is really good. And getting tickets for the Leafs is expensive, hard to do, and sometimes, that big thing is not, getting into, and it's not the same experience. The Marlies is in a really accessible place with a slightly better parking than Scotiabank, and it's affordable. Like, that transition in itself is not a bad thing for the Steel Dogs, but you can't be horrible to people. You can do right by people. If you're moving things, just let them have their last day in the sun. If nothing else, and I don't profess to kind of speak for anybody on it, apart from myself, I'd like to think people will realise that about myself right now. Dimitri Zimostra, if this is the end of the Steel Dogs as we know it, Dimitri Zimostra deserves to play every game as much as he wants, go off into the sunset, or go play for another team, or go and retire, and then Dimitri Zimostra deserves his jersey nail-gunned to the wall of Ice Sheffield. There is no trophy, anything. There is no high place finish. There is no Steel Dogs in the top half of the table or anything they've got without Dimitri Zimostra in the last couple of years. Everything he has given to that organisation, he deserves better than potentially being frozen out into the cold because the grand plan needs to start right now. Well, the grand plan ain't working at the moment. So maybe change tack just at least until the end of April. Get him to the end. And then when all the time is there to use to tinker, then you tinker. I said it again, Tony. The mic is yours when you want it. I ain't here to fire shots at you without giving you the right reply. You want to come on? You can come on. You can. Only you. Let's have a quick look at the chat then, so if you can see a few bits and pieces are kind of flying in. I know there's obviously been a lot in there about the Steel Dogs' performances this weekend. I fear for the Dogs next season if they survive. I don't, only because why would the Steelers have made this massive investment into them otherwise? I think is the thing there. But it is going to look different. I think this is the thing that's kind of coming out of a lot of this. It wasn't a pretty watch Saturday in MK. Steel Dogs' performances was alarmingly bad. Players disinterested and very untypical Steel Dogs display, which kind of speak to some of the things that have kind of come out in the statements from Tim Smith and Jack Brammer. I kind of feel like the Steelers will just get rid of a lot of the Dogs' core in the summer and bring in a bunch of young Brits playing over in North America or elsewhere in the UK. Yeah, Tom, I don't necessarily disagree. I also think that if it looks like that pathway to Elite League hockey is much more open, I could see a bunch of guys from other teams going there. Probably not Kieran Brown. If you want the whole of English hockey to improve, that is the direction the top two leagues need to go. I still maintain, rather than I appreciate you obviously living in America as you do, you're very, very used to that. I still maintain that we need a much more player-centric model than a club-centric model if we're wanting to develop players. I'm very much more a big believer in the German system because, of course, I have that bias in my system, just like you have an American-centric bias to your opinion on it. But I still think things like development licenses and players kind of being allowed up to a certain age to kind of just be registered up and down the thing, and I would raise that age to 25 and just let players have an elite league club and a national division team and literally have them kind of bounce up and down, but the elite league club manages the development of that player so they can pull them up and pull them down when they want them. And in the same way that you can have a development license, in kind of the same way actually, I use them as examples, but like Ollie Hemmingsmayer and Roman Cathcart are registered with the bases at Bison Juniors, the bases at Buffalo, and the Slough Jets. And effectively, the Jets have their registration, and when they aren't playing, they can go do whatever they want. I think there is a structure you can use to do it. And like I say, I think the model needs to be player-centric, not club-centric. That's my big issue. Players are people, not assets. They need to be treated as such. And I think that will mean you get better development of players because you treat them like a human rather than like a block. This isn't Tetris. I feel for Ali. Last season seemed so positive about the future of the club under him. Now watching on the side, seeing his hard work being ripped apart. Clearly something was obviously wrong because obviously, as we know, there was some financial issues with the Dogs that made Ali sell. So I get that too. But obviously, yes, it's been a tough year, tough last 12 months for Ali Cree. The Steelers don't owe the current players anything really. However, if they started moving the goalposts during the season, that's not really fair. Bingo, that's exactly where I am on that front, Thomas. Thank you. Having a team in the league is at all is amazing this season. Communication from owners has been awful ever since the takeover, leaving fans in the dark. Clarity on what's happening is needed. Yeah, and I think actually the thing for Steel Dogs fans is they've got to just start raising their voices about it, really. Charlotte, as an outsider, I barely recognise the club from the team that won Coventry less than 2 seasons ago. I feel for the fans of the Steel Dogs. I think we all do at the moment. Gavin, Steelers don't realise the lads at NHL levels have actual jobs outside of hockey. I think they do. I don't think that. Like I say, this is not a. For me anyway, I don't personally think that this is a kind of a thing of Obviously, they want to professionalise operations. And if you go back and look at my interview with Steve Nell, he said, being as professional as possible doesn't always mean everybody gets like a ton of money, and you can do that with volunteers as well. Some people would argue that actually a lot of those things need to be paid, and you'll therefore get better people because there's a real incentive to do it. But I don't necessarily think that the Steelers aren't aware of that, because there's definitely a couple of guys doing bits and pieces outside of hockey, like on their roster. But yeah, I do get what you mean. I think the Steelers have come into a different environment and haven't necessarily understood how things run. And it not being exactly the same as the Elite League is not a bad thing in and of itself. The Elite League definitely isn't perfect and needs to, but it being different in itself is not a bad thing. But they do need to realise that what's been built up in the early stages of this NIHL National Division are what they are, and they can come in and they can do their own thing to a point, but they've also got to play ball with the other club owners in there, I think, as well. The other news, of course, has come out today that there will be a new rink in Manchester. Part of this new development, and that Planet Ice will be involved in the running of that rink, whilst also in the same article committing to continuing to run Planet Ice in Altrincham. Now, Altrincham, technically not in Manchester, but close enough to not be a problem on that front. However, obviously throwing a few bits and pieces around there. For those of you who are not familiar, it's on the it is on the Twitter feed, but this comes from I'm just quickly reading through the article here from Insider Media. Turners have agreed to develop a new ice arena in Trafford City, Manchester, with a major pre-let also secured for the site. The Trafford City Ice Arena will be Planet Ice's biggest venue in the UK, with a purpose-built facility set to feature an ice rink which will also convert into a multi-use event space, which is something that Planet Ice in their press release after all the Steel Dogs mess was something that they said they were definitely trying to look at, about sort of diversifying. So an ice arena where they can also hold other events, very much kind of in Planet Ice's MO at the moment. Situated next to the Chill Factory and iFly, the 3-acre development would be located on the former Soccer Dome site, which was cleared by Peel Waters last year in preparation for future leisure developments. Well, there you go. More details and images of the proposed venue will be released closer to the planning submission, which will also include proposals for several on-site food and drink offerings. The deal between Peel and property investment firm iCities deal follows on from the recent announcement of Tartan Leisure being brought in by Peel Water to advance the first inland surf destination in the north of England, also to be located in Trafford City. Just flicking through this because there is a quote in here from Heath Rhodes, who's the Chief Operating Officer of Planet Ice. Peel Waters want to attract the best leisure operators to Trafford City, and we are keen to be working in partnership with them and iCities to develop a Planet Ice branded venue at this location. The venue will be very complementary to our existing facilities in the northwest, in particular Altrincham, where we are often at capacity. We plan to provide a large seating capacity at the new venue for on and off ice entertainment. Furthermore, we plan to invest in our Altrincham site, so having this new facility close by will allow our customers full access to ice during any works we do at Oakfield Road. The estimated build time of the ice arena and event space will be approximately 12 to 15 months once the team starts on site. I mean, of course, the issue there about investing in Altrincham, aside from the fact that Altrincham was technically meant to be a temporary rink, you're then left with the fact of what does Planet Ice investment look like in its facilities when you think of Basingstoke, Peterborough, Gillingham, all desperately needing work. The Sky Dome, in my opinion, is still brilliant. I love the Sky Dome, but it is starting to wear a bit around the edges. Bristol is obviously quite new, but it's still got a few bits and pieces. So yeah, there's what that looks like. If you're a fan of the Altrincham Ice Dome, I would not forgive you a little bit of apprehension on that front. They really need to get their priorities in the right place and tell us what the hell is going on in Basingstoke. They do, Richard. They massively do. Richard, if you don't know, if you ever look on Facebook, is the person doing some of the updates for the Buffalo at the moment. But yeah, the issue, of course, here is that they appear to have everybody kind of pulling in the same direction, whereas with Basingstoke, you've got the council not quite knowing what to do, and then Planet Ice and Standard Security is not able to kind of agree what's going on there, and that's the massive issue. I've said if anybody has an issue with what I said in my piece to end 2023, They know where to find me. I ain't hiding. So they can do something on that front. Something I feel that's gone under the radar is the fact Planet Ice are also building a new 2K seater rink in Dudley 2, working on 2 new rinks at much the same time whilst Basingstoke is in the dark. The thing with that Sigala is that somebody's building the venue, Planet Ice are going to run it. There's the difference there. So Planet Ice are obviously going to be involved because they know what ice rinks look like. But Planet Ice are kind of operating this rather than owning it and running it, seems to be my impression from what I've read there. Priorities are key for Basingstoke. Peterborough, Gillingham need a ton of refurbishment, and the ice at MK still needs sorting. Yeah, it's not like there isn't enough kind of going around for Planet Ice to kind of do in that front. But like from a business perspective, I don't blame Planet Ice for kind of looking at the shiny carrot being dangled in front of their face. We'd like to build an ice rink in Manchester. Who runs the current rink in Manchester? Ding 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 ding. They ain't gonna run away from that. So I can't blame them on that front. But I think for people, people like us in Basing, for people connected to Basingstoke like myself, for Peterborough, for Gillingham, for wherever, it's being loud and being vocal and keeping it up. Thank you, Richard. That's very nice of you to say. PI have their shiny new toys and don't care much about the crumbling existing ones. Much easier to get a contract to run something new than maintain your old ones. Yep, and there's the big issue on that front. What I'm interested to see with Basingstoke, if there is an issue, is what legal ramifications kind of come of it. I guess if Trafford PI goes ahead, the Manchester Storm will move there. I mean, kind of remains to be seen on that front. What I would envision is kind of similar to kind of what happened in Berlin, where the Wellblech Palast, the old rink in Berlin, wasn't shut down when the Eisbären moved into what is now the Mercedes-Benz Arena in the middle of sort of in east of the centre of Berlin. But it's kind of kept open for other bits and pieces, like the big team using it as a training facility, like the women's team, like the junior teams. I don't think any of the other third or fourth division sides play in there at the moment. But what you'd effectively have is Altrincham becomes just a practice facility, and then they can kind of play out of it, and you can kind of, and like I say, if they're wanting to have an event space there as well, Manchester effectively become an arena team. But what with more space, will the Storm fill it? Is a question that obviously needs to be asked there. Outside the question, who other than Planet Ice can run a rink? I mean, certainly at the moment, the other operators of rinks in this country, Rod, are a company called Everyone Active. They run Slough, they run Romford's rinks. Otherwise, a chunk of it is councils, because Oxford City Council run the rink in Oxford, where your son plays, of course. Telford Council run the rink in Telford. Streatham, GLL also do run rinks because they run the new rink at Lee Valley. They also run the rink in Swindon. But otherwise, like I say, a lot of these councils, like Dumfries and Galloway Council, run the Dumfries Ice Bowl, and a good job they do of that. So and there are other options out there, but it is kind of getting their foot in the door to be able to do it, I think, is kind of the problem. That's kind of where a chunk of it falls down. Or it would be somebody brand new. The Cardiff Devils, for example, operate the Vinticub Arena themselves and run that. And of course, they took up the second pad for a soft lane and climbing wall because, I don't know. It's all madness. He says, just quickly checking I haven't been sent any other messages whilst we're chatting away. No. But yeah, that's kind of where we're on that one. Either way, we've gotten through 3/4 of an hour and haven't actually talked about, and have only barely touched on the surface of any of the games from last weekend. So what we'll do very quickly, he says hitting the button. Now I'll hit the button. Ta-da! The results and everything are back. And of course, there have been a few games since we last spoke. And like I say, the Steel Dogs actually playing last Thursday, so the day after we all chatted last week, losing 4-3 to Hull. But then after that, they just got absolutely tonked on Saturday night at home, getting slapped about 10-1 in the Thunderdome by MK, as Jamie in the chat has already put. a very disinterested looking Steel Dogs team there. And then on Sunday, a slightly better result, but they do end up going down and losing again against the Raiders, who have genuinely picked up quite nicely relatively recently. Either way, we go back to Saturday. Top of the table action, first versus third, and the Phantoms, so they come close, but they're never close enough, it seems, against the Leeds Knights. The Knights with a 5-3 victory there, which obviously a big win given the fact that Milton Keynes won as well. First game of the double-header up at Dumfries between Solway and Bristol. Massive playoff implications towards the bottom of the table there. And a big win for the Sharks with the 6-4 victory over Jamie Elson's side. Telford, though, squeezed by Hull. Hull, of course, getting that win over Sheffield, but it's been a ragged run of form recently for the Seahawks, compounded by a decent win at home by the Tigers. Sunday in the hangar, goals, and goals. 13 for those of you who picked up the live stream between the Bees and the Wildcats. But Swindon, again, the Thomas Malazinski show does the business, and they win by 7-6. If you booked in advance, you booked the right ticket in advance, you were getting £1 per goal. Can't argue with that value for money. And then, as we said, the misery compounding for the Seahawks. They lose 5-2 at home against the Tigers. Not great for the Seahawks, especially as they head towards the end of January and that Cup semi-final encounter with Leeds. The Knights themselves, they pressed on. A 4-1 win for them against Peterborough at home, consigning the Phantoms to a 0-point weekend. Sheffield and Raiders we've already talked about, and then a 4-point weekend again for the Sharks. They managed to pull off the 5-3 win against Bristol, a win on Saturday for Curtis Warburton, a win on Sunday for Callum Hepburn, and the Sharks, where Sheffield are starting to falter, Bristol are faltering, and the Bees are kind of getting a little bit wonky in and around everything. That 8th and final playoff spot is starting to loom into view a little bit for Martin Grubb's side. Either way, we look quickly then towards this weekend, and Solway are in action on Friday night. Friday night lights for last year's Grand Slam winners in Division 1 against last year's all-conquering heroes of the National Division. Solway versus Leeds is a 7:30 face-off at the Dumfries Ice Bowl. The Sharks then, well, they've got a very, very long journey. They have a 7 p.m. face-off down in Bristol next Saturday night. Also 7 p.m. face-off at the Thunderdome. MK versus Telford. Don't sleep on that game. That one could be really interesting. The Raiders take on Hull. That's a 5:15 face-off at Sapphire Ice and Leisure. The Steel Dogs will be looking to kind of turn around their recent bad fortunes, and Peterborough will look to rebound from a 0-point weekend. 7:30 at Ice Sheffield, and then it's 6:30 at the Link for the Swindon Wildcats and the Bees. Sunday, 5 p.m. face-off for the Bees themselves. A quick turnaround for them as they take on the Raiders in Slough. Hull at home against MK. Milton Keynes are a team that Hull have had success against this season, but a Hull side out of form. Where will that one land? Leeds take on Bristol at 5:15 at the Castle. Swindon are at home again. They take on the Peterborough Phantoms at the Link. And then the last game on Sunday, 6 p.m, as is traditional, in Telford, the Telford Tigers and the Sheffield Steel Dogs. So that's where we are in terms of the national at the moment for everything. Let's just have a look at what we've got here. Fans were absolutely dire on Sunday, apart from period 1, the rest was rubbish. Oh, get off the fence, Kev, and say how you really feel. They were decent period 2, 3 on Saturday, so at least you got a game's worth. Yes, this is very true. Listening to Matty Davis, I'd see changes afoot for Hull. I wouldn't be surprised if they change in import. I don't think Matty Davis will sit on ceremony. It wouldn't surprise me to see him change some stuff up before the signing deadline to try and kind of get themselves out of the slump. Obviously, he won't be returning to the ice himself, given his knee. But Matty is not going to be a person scared of making changes by any stretch of the imagination on that front. So we don't need to worry too much about that. What we will do is we'll head back and just have a quick look at the National Division table. He says if you can press all the right buttons. And so the very, very familiar sight, everything we all expect anyway, which is that the Leeds Knights remain top of the NHL National Division. 29 games played, 50 points, 2 points ahead of Milton Keynes with a game in hand. The Wildcats, though, with their decent run of recent form, have pulled themselves up into 3rd place, 40 points from 29, so quite a bit off the pace, but getting a favourable playoff draw, especially with the group stages this year, always going to be a big and important thing. They are now 3 points ahead of the Peterborough Phantoms with 2 games in hand. The Phantoms 37 from 31. Hull down in 5th, 33 from 29. Slowly being clawed in by the Telford Tigers, 30 from 29 for Tom Watkins' side. The Raiders' recent run of good form has them in 7th, 27 from 31. And the Sharks now up into a playoff spot, 25 from 31, but they have played a game more than the Bees, who are on 24 from 30. So the Bees could take that playoff spot back. The Steel Dogs down into 10th now, 22 from 30 with their recent wretched run of form, and the Bristol Pitbulls, after their 0-point weekend from their time in Scotland, 17 points from 31 games. As we can see now as well, we have the confirmed dates for the Cup semi-finals in the National Cup. The first leg to be played between Hull and Leeds on the 31st at the Welsh Versatile Arena, with the second leg in Leeds on the 2nd of February. The first leg between MK and Swindon, coming up not too far away actually, of course will be in just 9 days' time on the 19th of January, with the second leg being played on the 8th. So quite a gap between those two there. Now, we've talked a little bit about North 1 and, of course, the fantastic games between Deeside and Blackburn over the weekend that provided a lot of entertainment and a lot of goals, and also a massive amount of controversy into the bargain. Of course, the whole division now back from its Christmas break, and as you can see, 7-5 win for Deeside on Saturday. A nice, close, tight game there in Lancashire, but one that the Dragons ultimately get the points out of. The Hull Jets and their decent home form continues with their 6-3 win over the Widnes Wild, who, of course, still battling it out for those last playoff spots. Could the Juggernaut carry on, was the thing I asked on Saturday afternoon. After their massive layoff, would the Billingham Stars be able to get back up and running as quickly as possible? And the answer was, yep. No banana skin for them at Ice Sheffield. A 6-2 win for Stephen Foster's side against the Scimitars at Ice Sheffield. And then on Sunday, the Deeside Dragons, well, like I say, clearly a bit of controversy in the wind there, but another win for the Dragons. 6-3 they beat the Hawks, a 4-point weekend as they look to keep pressure on Solihull and Billingham above them. The Nottingham Lions were 3-1 up at one stage against the Hull Jets, but they let it slip away, and the Jets win away from home, which is for regular viewers of this show know, is something of a rarity. Solihull are made to do it the hard way against Widnes, but they get 2 points at Hobbsmoat Road on Sunday with that 6-5 win, but a vital point for the Wild in the playoff race there. And Whitley, the side who many predicted to do well, but have definitely not had the season they were expecting, a 5-2 win for them against Sheffield will hopefully put a little bit of confidence back in the step after the Christmas break. Games that then this upcoming weekend, the M56 Cup match between Blackburn and Deeside. As if you didn't need more controversy between those two sides. We'll see whether Jared Dickinson's allowed into Blackburn. Probably not, but that's a 6 p.m. face-off there. And then otherwise, it's League and Cup action elsewhere for everybody else. Hull take on Sheffield at 5:30 at the Welsh Versatile Arena on Saturday. Widnes take on Solihull in a return of last week's game. Can the Wild get more than just 1 point from that encounter? Sunday, then a couple of games there. Billingham versus Whitley, the massive battle of the North East. Can the Stars continue on from their last encounter against Whitley, where they smashed the Warriors 8-1 at Hillheads? Deeside take on Widnes in League and Cup action at 5:15 over in North Wales. The Nottingham Lions take on the Blackburn Hawks at 7:20. That game should be live on the Lions YouTube page should you wish to watch it. We'll quickly pull up the table then. In North 1, we just scooped down to the Cup. Still no fourth team officially confirmed for the semi-finals, but Billingham, Solihull, and Blackburn all guaranteed entry into the semis. It's basically between Hull, Deeside, and Whitley for that last spot. Though with Deeside having only played 14 Cup games, it is advantage to the team from North Wales. Otherwise, as we said, the Juggernaut rolls on. The Billingham Stars, top of the table still, 34 points from 20 games, closely followed by Solihull, 32 from 21. Deeside 3 points back then in third, 29 points from 21 games, 4 points and a game in hand ahead of Whitley in fourth, 25 from 22. Blackburn, 24 from 20. Hull, 23 from 20. Widnes then, the big drop down there from 6th to 7th is 10 points, 13 from 21 for the Wild. And then Sheffield and Nottingham, both on 8 points. The Lions have played a game more, and Sheffield hold the tiebreaker between the two sides. So negative. We got a point. You did. You did get a point, but you still chucked away a 3-1 lead there, which is somewhat problematic, Chris. Hewitt and Kirk to Hull. I would be very surprised to see Jason Hewitt go to Hull, to be perfectly honest. One semi taken 3 days, the other's 3 weeks. Classic hockey. Yep, very, very much so. In the week of the second leg between MK and Swindon, the Cats week. Thursday, MK away in the Cup. Saturday, Leeds home. Sunday, MK away in the league. Not bad at all. Slightly easier than Leeds. 5 games in 8 days, I'd say, Jamie. Some teams really like being busy. I think people sometimes forget this. It sounds tough, but sometimes guys actually really, really do like it. So don't think too hard on it on that front. Either way, we were chatting about the only game in any of the 4 lower divisions last week whilst it was happening. But the Devils got their due. That 5-3 win over the Slough Jets was a big one for the Devils, and they continue that good form into the weekend. That 4-1 win, a heavily augmented side took on the MK Thunder, but the Devils doing enough to get over the line there. Oxford, well, it's been a pretty torrid year for Oxford on the ice, all things considered, and they came close, but they could not do the job at home against the Invicta Dynamos. A 7-5 win for Carl Lennon's side at the Ox Pens. And then the game I was at on Saturday, that 7-4 win between the Slough Jets and the Chelmsford Chieftains. Superb game, all in all. If you get the opportunity to watch Slough, you've got to go watch them. They are something else. Also made interesting for the fact that Brett Massey, the Jets' starting netminder for the majority of this season, injured during the week away from the ice. Rory McGibbon just icing in what I believe was his 6th game of the season. A very, very confident and assured performance that he really grew into as time went on during that game. Chelmsford just didn't get above sort of second or third gear. Tons of talent, tons of ability, but just didn't seem to have an answer for the energy and enthusiasm of the Jets. They got pushed back scoring on the first shot of the game didn't help a massive amount. And Jordan Lauday did not get a ton of help at very, very crucial times either. But such is the nature of things, because of course the next night it all got turned around. The Chelmsford Chieftains woke up in front of their home fans and a pretty confident 6-2 win over the Jets. Of course, the problem being that really only helps one team, and that's the Streatham Redhawks, the league leaders and last year's champions. They also give Oxford an absolute shellacking, a 10-1 win for Ben Painter's side to keep them very much at the front of the pack. And then it goes all the way to the shootout, multiple rounds of the shootout in the end. But Aaron Taylor with the big save on Mads Toon in the shootout, in sudden death in the shootout, giving the Devils a 5-4 shootout win against the Invicta Dynamos down in Kent. This upcoming weekend, then, the extra Britain Cup, so not the League Cup, but the extra cup. A few of them were put together. Streatham take on Invicta this coming Saturday. Everything else is regular League and Cup action. Slough take on Oxford in what should probably be a very tough game for the Oxford City Stars. They've struggled against Slough in terms of dealing with their pace this year. That's 6:30 at the Hangar. The other games are all on Sunday. Invicta take on Streatham. Streatham have slipped up at times this season before and slipped up against Invicta in the Cup. But will they be able to do the business in the league? That's 5:45 down in Gillingham. 6:45 at the Thunderdome then between the MK Thunder and the Slough Jets. 6:15 at Ox Pens. Oxford taking on Chelmsford. So a tough weekend for the City Stars. And at Sapphire Ice and Leisure, the Romford Buccaneers taking on the Solent Devils. That one could be a potential sleeper for a really, really excellent game, especially given the fact you've got some of the fantastic young talents on the Buccaneers like Brittany Capps and Joe Tomlin and some of those guys at the Devils who just never seem to ever say die quite as much as other teams would like them to. We're going to have a quick smash through the table. So in terms of the Southern Cup semi-finals, just the 3 teams confirmed still. Slough, Streatham and Chelmsford all confirmed. It's not quite all the way there for some teams, because Solent, if they win their games in hand, could pull themselves up into 4th spot. The Britain Cup, so the extra cup that's only got 5 teams in it, only a few games actually played in it so far. Oxford have only played the 1 game. Chelmsford have only played the 1 game in it as well. We'll see how that one goes. The league table itself, though, still 3 teams all on level points, because Slough and Chelmsford, if they'd gotten a 4-point weekend, would have been top of the table. Instead, both sides remain on 28 points from 21 games played. The problem is that Streatham now have four games in hand and are also on 28 points. Massive, massive, massive advantage here for Ben Painter's side as they look to go for their third league title in a row and their spot again in the National Division 1 title game at Coventry for the national playoff weekend. Solent then, after their decent weekend, they are level on points with the Invicta Dynamos. Both the Devils and the Dynamos on 24 points. The Devils hold the tiebreaker and have played 2 less games. Winning their games in hand could theoretically take them up as high as second place. Although you'd be interesting to see who their games in hand are actually against. The Romford Buccaneers then are in 6th, 12 from 17. Oxford 8 from 19, and the MK Thunder at the bottom 1 and 14 so far in their 15 games played. Caps and Tomlin both scoring their first senior Raiders goals in the last week or so. If they keep going that way, these two will be huge plays for the Raiders. Hands off everyone in future. I mean, the issue being is they could hopefully push on well beyond the national division there, Colin. But as you say, Brindley Caps has been one of the stories of South London this year. Slough Jets, always enjoyable team to watch. Hard to believe how young some of them are. Definitely worth a trip. 100% agree. 100% agree. Been there a couple of times. If nothing else, because I work in the NHS on the regular, £9 for a ticket if you've got a blue light card. You have to show it on the way in. But £9 for what I got on Saturday, superb value. Superb value. No arguments from me there at all. Into North 2 then, which has obviously thrown up some ridiculous scores. It's obviously also thrown up the highest score of the season so far, that 24-0 walloping that Sutton handed out to Kingston. Although Kingston, of course, managing to pull themselves up in recent weeks. But of course, there was Kingston and Sutton taking part in the only game over the Christmas season. But back to regular action and a massive, massive win for the Coventry NIHL Blaze, beating Sutton in the Sky Dome in the shootout. Now again, it probably only benefits one team in the long run, which is Telford. But Coventry are not going quietly when it comes in terms of shooting for the title in North 2. Maybe, and you feel like they're probably going to fall short in this one, but a huge win nonetheless, and second spot, especially with playoff seedings on the line, never a bad thing. Goals galore at the world's most versatile arena in that early face-off on Saturday, but Bradford gets some vital points towards the bottom end of the table. An 8-5 win for the Bulldogs against the Sharks in Hull, and a much closer tie over at Ice Sheffield, but one that the Altrincham Aces do win, and win in regulation, a 5-4 win over the Sheffield Titans. Sunday then, the Billingham Buccaneers back to action and completing the full 60 minutes as they give the Titans a 0-point weekend, a 5-1 win up at the Forum for Billingham, and despite a decent win on Saturday, they can't do the business on Sunday in Bradford. The Bulldogs shut out by the Coventry NIHL Blaze, 3-0 the final score there. Sutton returned to winning ways with that 8-4 win over the Nottingham Lions too. And then Telford, the league leaders, the favourites for the title, come back from the Christmas break in emphatic fashion. A 10-0 shutout win for Scott McKenzie's side at home against the Kingston Sharks. This coming weekend then, just the 2 games on Saturday, 5:30pm face-off in Shropshire for the Telford Tigers against the Bradford Bulldogs. Can the Bulldogs spring a surprise on the league leaders? And then the Billingham Buccaneers at home, 7:30pm face-off for them. They take on the Kingston Sharks. Just 2 games on Sunday, 5:45 over in Manchester for the Altrincham Aces and the Billingham Buccaneers. And then an unconfirmed face-off time for the Sheffield Titans and Nottingham Lions 2 in that local derby. Which means we then just have a quick squiz at the tables in North 2. In terms of the Cup, obviously the big 3 there in North 2 already qualified for the Cup semi-finals. Telford, Sutton and Coventry already into the hat. And then 3 teams there, all on 15 games played, all tied on 14 points. It's going to be one of Sheffield, Altrincham or Billingham who make their way into the semi-finals themselves. The league table itself, though, by virtue of the fact they've just played more games, Sutton do sit top of the table at the moment, 37 from 22, but Telford, with just the 1 loss on the season, 141 goals scored and 49 conceded. The Tigers have 36 from 19. Of course, a win there would immediately take them back to the table, and they have 3 games in hand over Sutton. Coventry, like we said, they're still hanging around, 33 from 22 for them. And then the drop-off is pretty substantial, a 12-point gap between third and fourth, albeit the Buccaneers haven't played as many games. 21 from 20 for one of the new sides in North 2. Sheffield, 20 from 20. Altrincham, 16 from 19. Bradford, 13 from 19. Kingston, 6 from 21. And Nottingham Lions were just with a record of 1-16 and 1. 3 points for the Lions' second team so far this season. And then finally we get to South 2. Like I say, for me, still the big sleeper league in terms of the excitement and the fun. And a big win for last year's league champions. Not been the best of seasons at times for Bristol Pitbulls. They've been a bit inconsistent, but a 9-0 win over Solent will obviously brush away any Christmas blues. The team that's probably in the best position, though, in terms of the league title this year is the Guildford Phoenix. They remain undefeated after a 7-2 win at home at the Spectrum against the Cardiff Fire. It was a home-and-home weekend for Invicta, last year's playoff champions, and this new-look Basingstoke Buffalo side had a big 5-4 win. The Buffalo playing without Dan Weller-Evans, injured and out for an undisclosed period of time. Morgan Parsons taking the net, the former Bison junior, giving an admirable performance there down in Kent as the Bison pick up the win. And a much more one-sided affair up in Peterborough. The Phantoms slipped up in Lee Valley against the Lions. They would not replicate that performance. 11-1, and the Phantoms absolutely give the Lions a kicking to welcome them back to action in 2024. The Buffalo then back at home with a 4-1 win, and then the Phoenix's win over the Oxford Rising Stars. Obviously a much closer game than people would anticipate between those two sides, but the Phoenix remain perfect through all of their games played still. Plenty of action then upcoming this weekend, and a pretty full Saturday in South 2, it should be said. 5:30pm face-offs in Chelmsford for the Warriors and the Cardiff Fire, so one of the Fire's longest journeys of the season so far, and a huge game at Ali Pally, especially with playoff seeding implications, and in terms of the Huskies, who are still gunning for the title, could be a huge game as Haringey take on Basingstoke. And the Buffalo, who ran the Huskies close and lost in overtime in Basingstoke before Christmas, will be looking to play spoiler there. 5:45 in Kent for the Invicta Mustangs and the Peterborough Phantoms. A big game for the Phantoms to not lose there. They will not want to slip up against last year's playoff winners. And 5pm down in Gosport for the Solent Junior Devils and the Lee Valley Lions. And then at the Oxpens on Saturday, 6:15pm face-off for the Oxford Rising Stars and the Streatham Blackhawks. Just the one game on Sunday, and that's the Blackhawks returning home for the London Derby. The Streatham take on Haringey. That's 6:45 this coming Sunday at on the High Road. We just get into the tables then. If we scoot down to the Cup semi-finals at the moment, and things are confirmed in the West. The Guildford Phoenix and the Basingstoke Buffalo confirmed as having made it through by virtue of the tiebreaker, because the Buffalo holding the tiebreaker against the Pitbulls, nobody else can catch them. The Buffalo make the Cup semi-finals for the first time in quite a few years, and also doing it in not too bad of a way. 31 goals conceded in 10 games is a vast improvement for the Buffalo in previous years, although the Phoenix will obviously be very, very confident given the fact they remain undefeated and have only conceded 16 goals in those 9 Cup games, having scored 65. The seedings are not 100% set, although at the moment, just because there's still Cup games to be played. Haringey and Peterborough have qualified, but it is not 100% set in stone who will be first and who will be second. As we can see, if it started today, Haringey and Basingstoke would go to battle again. Guildford would take on Peterborough. In the league table itself, then, again, it becomes the virtue of the fact that teams have not played as many games, and tiebreakers are not fully sort of set out at the moment. But Peterborough currently sit top of the table. 3 teams on 22 points. Peterborough have played 14 games. They're 11-3. Haringey have played 13 games and are 11-2. Guildford are 11-0. 3 games in hand on Peterborough, 2 games in hand on Haringey. It's still very much advantage Guildford Phoenix when it comes to things in the league race there. Bristol, 21 from 17. you feel they've just lost too many games too early and puts them out of the race. Similar with the Basins at Buffalo, who could get themselves up, who could technically get themselves as high as third, 19 from 15, but a very, very decent year. Albeit now, a lot is going to fall onto the shoulders of Morgan Parsons for the next couple of weeks as he takes over in net from the injured Dan Weller-Evans. There is then a bit of a gap. The Buffalo comfortably in the playoff places for the first time in quite some time. Cardiff in 6th, 14 from 14. Invicta, last year's playoff champions, 12 from 13. And Streatham, currently because of tiebreakers, on the inside looking out. They have 8 points from 13. But Chelmsford and Solent also on 8 points. Both have only played 12 games, so a game in hand. And the potential for both sides to make that final playoff spot. Oxford, in 11th place, 5 from 12. Lee Valley, 4 from 12. So not out of the question that the Lee Valley Lions, particularly if they could spring a surprise this weekend and beat Solent, could be looking at lifting themselves off the bottom of the table for the first time in quite some time. And there we are then. We've gone through the whole lot. Every game played, every game to be played, and all the news and action from across all 5 divisions of the National Ice Hockey League structure here. So, of course, at this point, what we usually do, we throw open the door. Anything else anybody wants to talk about? Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, chuck it all in the chat. Let's just have a bit of a free-for-all to end the show as we usually do. Feel end of season Chelmsford will be gutted they haven't won it. Few stupid games lost. I massively agree, James. They'll be kicking themselves about Saturday. So much experience, so much talent in that side, and for whatever reason they just take their foot off the gas at just the wrong moment and just can't quite seem to get themselves over the line. I imagine it's very, very frustrating to be a Chieftains fan at times. Big game between Altrincham and Billingham for cup final placement. Yes, it is. It will be very, very impressive. It will be very, very large. I would lean towards Billingham. I lean towards Billingham just because I think that all the issues that they had, they seem to have kind of screwed their heads back on and seem to be in a very, very good place. Altringham's form has kind of been so wonky that it's quite hard to tell where they will fall in that thing. I would put my money towards Billingham on that one. He says desperately, of course, having a quick flick just to make sure. Now, the other thing we're going to do at the end of the show, because we're obviously going to finish before too long, and I'm aware that they're recording live tonight. They would normally record tomorrow, but what we're going to do after this, Door 14 Hockey are broadcasting live right now because this was the only night they could get them all together in the one place to do the podcast. What we're going to do when we finish off here, we're going to all jump over to Door 14, and we'll go crash the stream and just cause them a bit of a headache. Is my plan. What I am going to do is I'm just going to quickly, whilst people are sticking stuff in the comments, whilst you're putting your questions and your things in that you want to chat about, I'm very, very quickly going to find. I'm just going to quickly put the link in the chat, and then, like I say, once we finish here, we'll all hop off over there and just go have a bit of a laugh in their chat, have a bit of a giggle, and get ourselves and have a bit of a laugh there, and also as well because obviously very, very different show. It's hard being a podcast from it's hard being an ice hockey podcast from Belfast when you're having to deal with the fact that you've got the originators of the space to kind of contend with. So I'm just going to put that in the chat, which hopefully is going to show up in a minute or two. But yeah, yep, agree. Although Stars are playing, I mean, obviously that will impact as well. But I mean, I still would be interested to see it. I still think Billingham can kind of come through the other side of that one. But yeah, well, like I say, keep an eye on that link. When we finish here, we'll all go dive over there, and we'll all just join in, and we'll have a bit of a chuckle about everything. Can see a few people subscribing to the channel as we chat. So thank you very much for that one. Should be fun. That's always appreciated. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Feed the algorithm, hamster, as I like to say. Just checking around for other news as we're chatting. There doesn't appear to be anything super massive at the moment. But like I say, questions, comments, anything else anybody wants to wants to chuck in. If you're going to Coventry weekend, reserve your hotel. If staying there on Saturday, the Coventry Half Marathon is happening on Sunday morning of the playoffs weekend. Yep, that's a kick in the teeth. That's a kick in the teeth. Going to be very, very hard for people. I need to speak to my friends. Not tons of other... I was going to say, we talked about so much news. We've done it all. We've done it all really quickly. Not tons else I can kind of see. Of course, stuff to do with the NHL All-Star Game has obviously come out. People can kind of vote in their bits and pieces. I love the fact that Alexander Ovechkin, as everyone said, don't vote. Ov and everybody else around him sort of said, don't vote for him, he doesn't want to go. So he's not interested on that front. So it is what it is on that one. But yeah, like I say, what a crazy couple of weeks. What crazy... Certainly been a crazy week or so. If you are going to Coventry, yes, definitely do reserve get your hotels and bits and pieces sorted. But yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated to see who can kind of make Coventry now. You're pretty certain on the fact that, given the fact they won't be in the same group, that Leeds and MK will be there. But who comes out of that group stage? Because we saw the last time they did groups that it was not straightforward. It wasn't straightforward in the slightest. And obviously a lot of people thought Leeds were going to make it that first time. Didn't. We obviously went back to having quarterfinals, and now we're not having quarterfinals. So very interested to kind of see what happens on that front. And then, of course, the other big thing we will get, which is the National Division 1 title game, where we are pretty much, I think, still staring down the barrel of Streatham versus Billingham. Streatham, of course, if you're unfamiliar, lost the last two finals to Solway. Solway, of course, are now joined the National Division themselves, which opens the door. And Billingham are much more like Streatham than Solway are. It will be much more of a battle of attrition, much more physical than the other games were. And you know that I said it after I spoke to him after last year's final, that Ben Painter, you could see the gears whirring in his head, and I'm very interested to see what happens come the Sunday of Coventry. You can still get a good deal on the Doubletree. Lazy marathon runners should run there and back. It's a warm down. What more do you need? Nicely done, James. I can appreciate that one. Well done. Well done on that front. Either way, I want to go make sure that we dive into... We go and check out and go and crash the Door 14 boys before anything. So I will quickly say... last call then for folks. And like I say, the link is in the chat. So do go dive in. And we will... and like I say, we will go and have a... we'll go and, like I say, we'll just go cause a bit of ruckus. So, like I say, we'll click on that link in the chat in a bit, and then we'll head out of here. But like I say, last call, because we're just going to, like I say, just in case there's anything else anybody wants to chat about. Da-da-da-da. They're still ticking along, which is fine. But yeah, like I say, let's go crash the other lot because it'll be funny. And so what we'll do is we'll call it there. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, your number one source for everything related to the National Ice Hockey League with all the craziness. Follow my journey this season from the Banners on the Road series, long form, in-depth match reports from every game I go to this season. Of course, you have our Hockey Stories series, long form pieces of content, both in written form and audio visual form for you to check out. From the 19th century to the present day, behind the Iron Curtain, into World War II and beyond, players, officials, all kinds of stuff. Make sure you go check all of that out. The back catalogue of the old BOTW podcast is there to check out, as well as our free to download tabletop ice hockey game, Dice Hockey, that you can play at home with a few bits and pieces around your house. All I do ask, if you do download Dice Hockey and you enjoy it, please consider chucking some money towards Parkinson's UK. My dad has Parkinson's. He also has Parkinson's dementia now, which is crap. So it'd be really nice if we could raise some money towards research and a cure for that. But like I say, the better part of 13 years worth of stuff for you to check out over at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Facebook.com/bannersonthewall if you like getting your news and stuff through your Facebook feed. Everything that goes on the website, the links to all the What's Current streams and all the big stuff we do, that goes through onto the Facebook page. So make sure you go over and like that. Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at BannersOTW. That's the best place to keep up with me and my sort of rolling hockey commentary, including bits and pieces that don't necessarily make it to the website. Things like what happened with the situation with Bailey Conga and Leeds, for example. So if you don't follow us over there, do make sure you do. And of course, there's our virtual busking hat over at buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. BOTW is never going to go behind a paywall or anything like that. But where the costs have increased this year, because I'm not going to one place, I'm going to loads. If you like what you see, if you want to support it, if you just want to chuck a couple of coins in the pot to keep the lights running and the stuff, it doesn't just go into my pocket. So please do head over to buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. But of course, we're on YouTube. All of the links are down there in the description of this video. And if you're down there looking at bits and pieces, hit like on the video, hit subscribe. Of course, it pushes things along ever so slowly. We're a niche within a niche here at BOTW, but any and all support we massively do appreciate. And of course, Wednesday nights, 8 PM, the BOTW What's Current stream, the first and only live show, and I'm going to say it, it's the best live show that deals with all things across the NIHL. Thank you very much for joining us here, because of course we have our lovely little community of folk, and it means we get to chat about hockey on a Wednesday night, which is pretty awesome. But like I say, Wednesday nights, What's Current stream, all is there. Interested to see how the seating plan will go. Could they move MK to blocks 7, 8 and 9, for example? I venture that they will keep MK down the same side of the Sky Dome, possibly move you along a little bit. I don't think you'll be moved quite the way round behind the net. I don't think they'll do that, just because the blocks aren't as big. They look bigger, but they're not. So I would expect MK to be roughly where they've been before. Either way, another one done. Another one done. I don't know what game I'm going to this weekend. I'm waiting for some word back as to whether I'm potentially needed in some places, so we will see. Worst case, I might go watch the Lee Valley Lions play Solon, play the Junior Devils in Gosport. Means I can go and park and I won't get a parking ticket to watch them. But